are all art-minded people, no matter what major we're in, because you have to understand art and you have to be able to talk about it. It's just, I feel so comfortable. Like, this is my place. It's like, where have you people been all my life? Like, what is this? It's like a whole new planet of people that think similarly and feel similarly about the things that they create and like treat art the same way that you do.
For 170 years, MORE has existed to connect study of art and design with the creative industries. I see myself in these women. I was the first one in my family to go to college, and many of them are the same. The Visionary Woman Award means the difference between going to college or not for many of these students. And I can't tell you how many people I've met who say, MORE changed my life. This is the way that we invest and others invest, the community invests in our students. These students come here often with no hope of going to college, and then they become the artist and designer that they are going to be. They understand that life is a journey, an intellectual one, a creative one, and they begin their journey here.
Without the scholarship, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be creating the way I am right now.
That's the really amazing thing about this program, is that it's not just a scholarship, it's a program. And I'm really thankful for it, personally.
It's here's support for you, here's empowerment for you, and that part's the most important part for me.
Exactly. It's also just kind of like, at least I'm living the life the way I want it to be. You know, I'm creating, and that's how I want to spend it, and I'm happy here.
I feel like this whole journey has just been a learning and growing experience for me, and I'm just halfway there, so I can't wait to see, you know, what I look like in 2 years from now and what I'll have figured out then.
Calligraphy and textiles I really respond to. These that go all over the place are inspiration, plants, berries. It wasn't that I planned to be an artist, but I ended up being one. I actually didn't really think about a career. I just thought about each next step. These are older pieces. I felt being at MORE was a wonderful place to get started, that there were no boundaries, anything was possible. So these I still do. In 1974, 3 other students from MORE and our teacher, Ken Vavrick, we all went out to look for a studio together, and we found a large building, which was wonderful and where we really wanted to be able to do our work, but it was so big that we had to figure out a way to make it so that we could all work there. And we came up with the idea of the clay studio, where we would take in other artists who would have spaces to work, would share materials, would help build the kilns, and we'd all be equal members in this together. Well, I think the life of an artist is very solitary. That's what's so great about being in the clay studio, or any communal studio, is the sharing and the ideas that go back and forth. Learning about different glazes, watching other people work, it was very helpful. I think it's really important to love what you're doing. You have to love making art, because there are a lot of roadblocks, there are a lot of things you have to overcome. I take a piece of wire, and in moving it around, I feel like I'm drawing in space. I've always loved being in my studio. It's very important to me. If there are days that I don't get here, just something doesn't feel right.
We have over 150 scholars in the Visionary Woman program. That means that the people who come to the event are part of a legacy. And these students are remarkable. They're working at Nickelodeon, at North Face, they're entrepreneurs, they're stylists, they're doing everything that their promise suggests. And so the investment in these students has allowed them to be part of the creative industries in a very meaningful and productive way. So that transformation works internally and it works back to society.
First thing I look for is a person who has a mind that thinks, okay, that can express him or herself. They know exactly who they are. That ability to really be able to explore, to allow oneself to go and see new horizons and to think about it. And so we're like the guide that helps that person through it. Okay, they can come to us anytime and sit and talk about it, where they are at that moment. And it's so important for them to do this. This is not a scientist, a doctor, nothing like that. This is a person who goes in that studio alone, creates alone, okay? There's no one to tell him or her what to do. That all comes from within. So the most important you can do for that person is to make sure that that person has somebody to say, fantastic, I love it, keep doing it. And that's the key. That's the key. Because they are as good as any other artist, and I've just felt that the art world stayed within this group of men, basically, who dominated the art world. And so we needed to explore and see what others are doing. I don't want my artists to be put in a box. Guess what? These are artists. I don't want you to define them. We define them and tell you what they are. Why is art important? It's been important since the day we began to live as human beings. It gives us a feeling about life and living and how important it is to interact with something that is greater than you. Let no one tell you that you can't do it. Never do that. Let no one define you. Define yourself first, then you can go out into the world. Very important. Yeah.
The American philosopher Lewis Hyde says, artists unlock the genius of civilization. And I couldn't have said it better myself. So that's exactly what the Visionary Woman Honors Program does. We open the door for these students, and we allow them the chance. We give them the resources to unlock their own genius, to influence the community, the field, and dare I say, the civilization that we live in. Art is an extremely powerful social force. And we have to recognize that it's also an economic good.
I guess the power of art for me is just feeling like you're not alone, and that there's somebody else out there who's feeling profound things.
It's also really good at sending out messages. Just having a really powerful image that gives you such an emotive response and makes you feel so strongly about something.
I think something that art kind of intentionally or unintentionally makes everyone feel is empathy. Art makes people realize that their perspective is not the only perspective and their experience isn't the only experience.
I had been commissioned to design a new publication for Time that never came out. And I had no magazine experience when I did it, which was great. Sometimes too much experience limits you. I discovered that if you did anything the same way 3 times, you were more or less an expert at it, and that was a kiss of death, and that it was better to try to do something you didn't know how to do so you could fail, but you could learn something, because it's very difficult to learn anything when you already know how to do it. I consider my head like a slot machine or a crazy computer, that you take a brief, and the brief has all kinds of information attached to it, and you do research, and you go see the client, and you find out what their conditions are, and what's necessary for them, and where they're going, and that's all in one side of your brain. Then on your other side of the brain is every movie you've ever seen, every book you've ever read, every person you've ever talked to, every joke you've been told, every cliche you've ever learned, and everything that you've absorbed as a cultural being in your lifetime. And that's living on the other side of the brain. And there's this moment in time where the cherries all line up and the coins come out. And it's a moment of aha, where you've made an analogy and a connection that is a form of communication that can be recognized by a broad audience, that has to do with marrying sort of what I would describe as emotional, cultural, national references that connect to another idea, and within that becomes something that's recognizable. But you don't think about it very often when you're doing it. You do the gathering on one side very consciously, and the gathering of what's already inside you, one is conscious and one is unconscious, and you put them together, and something results as it. And you can't describe the moment that's going to happen. Making things becomes more and more important to me as I get older. There's less time, and there's so much to make.
I cannot underscore enough the importance of the generosity of the people who support the Visionary Woman Awards event. It means so much to these students. Everything that we do here is strategic, and we teach the students to think in the same way. Think about your future, prepare for it, and we work with the students to give them the tools, the skills to leave here and be intelligent, lifelong learners.